week 3 of the fantasy football season. Here's the top 20 quarterbacks I'm ranking this week. Number 1, Josh Allen of the Buffalo Bills. So it was close this week between Lamar and Josh Allen. But every week, these two quarterbacks, they're locked in as top options. But this week, I like the matchup just a little bit better for Allen versus Miami coming to town. And Thursday Night Football games we usually know are close ball games. So Allen, great track record versus Dolphin team. And this week, I think he goes out there and has a big game. After last week, it was the James Cook show, and he took a little bit of a backseat. Number 2, Lamar Jackson of the Baltimore Ravens. For the first 2 weeks of the season, he's gone out there and put up some huge numbers as Lamar Jackson. This week, another potential high-scoring game with the Lions coming to town after they scored 52 points in last week's victory over the Chicago Bears. And Lamar, you know he does it all. Run the football, throw the football. Now he's even spreading that football out all over the field to guys like Hopkins, Dante Walker, 2 touchdowns last week. Only Mark Andrews, the only guy not getting it going, where it looks like right now Zay Flowers is the number 1 option in the passing game. Number 3, Jalen Hurts of the Philadelphia Eagles. So far, Hurts, he's off to a quiet start. Week 1 versus Dallas, he had a solid game, but the rushing touchdown saved his day. And then last week, he didn't even pass for 100 yards, was Jalen Hurts. But a push touchdown saved his day. But this week, they got to put foot on the gas a little bit more, I think, is Philadelphia. The Rams are coming to town, and we know that offense is loaded with Puka Nacua leading the way to go with Devontae Adams and Kyren Williams out of the backfield. So I think this could be a high-scoring game between these teams, and Hurts has to put up some more numbers. Number 4, Patrick Mahomes of the Kansas City Chiefs. So it's looking like Xavier Worthy is going to be back in this ball game for this Kansas City Chiefs team, and they obviously could use him in a big way as a deep ball threat and a good yard after catch wide receiver, where last week Tyquan Thornton, Hollywood Brown, and Juju Smith-Schuster were the options on the field for Patrick Mahomes. But his rushing ability has gone back up this season. He looks a little bit quicker, and he's even running defenders over. So this week in a matchup with the Giants that we just saw Dak and the Cowboys drop 40 on this defense, I think Mahomes goes out there on Sunday night, has a nice game. Number 5, Jaden Daniels of the Washington Commanders. So he's not going to practice today on Thursday. Time of recording, this is Jaden Daniels, but he's going to try to go tomorrow in practice. So Daniels last season, we thought he was going to miss some time with injury, but he got it out and played through it. And I think we could see a similar thing this week here with Daniels. This Commander team, I know it's early in the year, 1-1, but this is a good matchup versus the Vegas Raiders. And even not at 100%, let's say, with the knee sprain, Daniels, I still think, could go out there, have a good game versus the number 6, Baker Mayfield of the Tampa Bay Buccaneers. Baker Mayfield, it doesn't matter the team he's versing. He's turned into a matchup-proof quarterback as well, I believe, is Baker. And when you got guys like Mike Evans, Emeka Egbuka in the receiving room, and then Bucky Irving, one of the better receiving backs in the league, it just makes everything easier. So this week in a matchup versus the New York Jets, who we thought would have a decent defense coming into the year. So far, they've given up a lot of points in the first 2 weeks of the season, over 60 points total. So this week, Baker, home opener for Tampa, I think goes out there, has a good game. Number 7, Justin Herbert of the Los Angeles Chargers. So all of a sudden, this offense has turned into a very pass-first offense. Last week in the first half, they threw the football 85-90% of the time before halftime, where Hampton only had 2 carries before halftime. So Justin Herbert, very comfortable in this Greg Roman offense this season. They got upgrade at receiver, bringing back Keenan Allen after trading him away for 1 season off to the Bears, and it's definitely helped. Keenan Allen's got 2 touchdowns, Quentin Johnston with 3, and now only Lab McConkey they got to get going. I know this week it's a tough matchup versus a good Denver defense on paper, but last week we saw the Indianapolis Colts go out there, week versus defense, have a good game. So I think Herbert back home again with this Charger team, running a lot of 3 receiver sets, could have a good game this week. Number 8, Jordan Love of the Green Bay Packers. So maybe I'm higher on Jordan Love than consensus, but I just like what Jordan Love's doing in the early going. He's playing clean football. This Packer defense obviously is going to hold offenses down, and it's going to make the game easier for Love. We know Jaden Reed, he's out 6 to 8 weeks with obviously the collarbone injury, and now Matthew Golden, maybe he'll step up with Tavian Wicks in this offense, but he's the type of quarterback that spreads that ball out, gets his numbers so far in the early going. And this week in a pretty decent matchup for Cleveland, even though we know they got Myles Garrett, Denzel Ward, 2 Pro Bowl type of defenders. I still think Love has a big game at the dog pound. Number 9, Dak Prescott of the Dallas Cowboys. Dak last week went out there. He had a big ball game versus the New York Giants, a team that he's owned throughout his NFL career. Is Prescott 361 in the air, 2 touchdowns, and an interception. And this week, another good matchup at Soldier Field at a Bear defense that just got torched by Jared Goff and the Detroit Lions 52-21, where Goff went for 335 and 5 touchdowns. So this could be a high-scoring game between these two teams. Dak Prescott, so far this season's looked pretty good. Week 1, they could have won that game, but Lamb dropped some crucial passes at the end of that one. But Prescott, he looks comfortable. And adding a guy like George Pickens, upgrade at running back with Javonte Williams, where last season it was Elliott and Dottle, has made him a little bit better, I think, as well this year. 10, Caleb Williams staying in the same game with the Chicago Bears. So Caleb Williams, I'm not a big fan of Williams. He misses a lot of throw. He's not accurate, and it takes him a while to pick up a system as well as Caleb Williams. But this week in a matchup with the Cowboys coming into Soldier Field, I think Williams is going to have a big game. Him and Rome Odunze at least have been on the same page, where Odunze already has 3 touchdowns first 2 games, where last week he went for 128 and a touchdown. So this week with the Cowboys coming in, I think Williams, with this great matchup, is too tough to pass up. If you're looking at some of these options close to him in the rankings, 11, Daniel Jones of the Indianapolis Colts. So Daniel Jones won the quarterback competition over Anthony Richardson in training camp. But we'll see if Jones holds up. So far, first 2 weeks, it were home games for Indianapolis. And he played great games, thrown for a lot of yards, rushing touchdowns, which we always knew he was good at the goal line, sneaking it in, and has some wheels on him. So this week at Tennessee could be a bit of a trap game, I think. It's on the road, number 1. And number 2, it's a division game where anything goes in those division matchups. So this week, Daniel Jones, I'm going to limit expectations a little bit, but he's still a top 12 option. Number 12, Drake May of the New England Patriots. So the first 2 weeks, Drake May, he's looked good in this offense with New England. May last season showed some flashes. This year, they got a little more help in the offense. Stephon Diggs, they added in free agency. Trevion Henderson, they drafted. Keyshawn Botte, he could be a breakout receiver this season. He's had 2 good games so far. And this week versus Pittsburgh, they're going to have to put some points on the board. Last week, Pittsburgh got blown out by the Seattle Seahawks. And this week, I think Drake May could go out there and he could run for some yards as well. And he's got a good arm where he spreads the football out as well. 13, Jared Goff of the Detroit Lions are coming off that monster game, 335 and 5 touchdowns for Goff. His home road splits, they're totally different. And this week, it's a tougher matchup, no doubt about it, at the Baltimore Ravens, where we know their defense, when it locks in, could be one of the better Ds in the league. But we saw in week 1, it was a high-scoring shootout between the Bills and the Ravens. And that's a possibility. It could be this with the Lions coming to town this week, but I'm going to limit expectations a little bit with Goff with a tough matchup and being on the road. If the Lions were at home, he'd be ranked higher this week. 14, Kyler Murray of the Arizona Cardinals. Kyler Murray, he's been an up-and-down quarterback over the last couple of seasons, ever since tearing the ACL. And this season, I think he could be a quarterback that averages 17, 18 points per game. And so far this year, it's been decent for Kyler Murray. Trey McBride, I want to see get a little bit more involved in this offense and more targets, even though the numbers have been pretty good for McBride, but the problem has been finding the end zone for him. And Marvin Harrison, the inconsistency continues from his rookie year into this year. But this week in a matchup at San Francisco, I think Kyler Murray, he could be a back-end start option for fantasy owners, a team he's familiar with, and this possibly doesn't have a lot of upside of being a high-scoring game. 15, Bo Nix of the Denver Broncos. Week 1, it was a bad game for Nix. 2 interceptions, fumbled the football. But last week went out there in Indianapolis and played a good game. But this week, a tougher matchup, division matchup at the Chargers. I know Khalil Mack, he's out with the elbow injury. He should be back in a few weeks. That helps this offense a little bit over there in Denver. And also Troy Franklin breaking out last week, 8 for 89 and a touchdown. Another option in the offense that he could rely on. But like I said, with Nick so far, getting a little too fancy out there as Nick's with on the run, sidearm throwing, where he just got to stay in the confines of the offense a little bit, I think, is Nick's. And this week in a tougher matchup, he's down in the rankings a little. 16, Trevor Lawrence of the Jacksonville Jaguars. Lawrence last week, a nice game, 3 touchdowns. But it'll be nice to see Brian Thomas Jr. and Travis Hunter get things going, because if those guys could get going, Lawrence definitely can move up the ranking board. So I think Lawrence in this Liam Cohen offense is going to have a decent season. This week, a middle-of-the-pack matchup versus division rival Houston Texans coming in. We saw the Texans do a pretty good job, I thought, on Monday night versus a good offense in Tampa Bay, holding them to 20 points. So Trevor Lawrence, he's thrown the football well so far in the early going. He's in for a bounce-back season, but we got to see a little bit more before he's a guy in that top 12 range. 17, Aaron Rodgers of the Pittsburgh Steelers. Week 1 versus the Jets, he went out there. He threw a touchdown party, 4 touchdowns in that one. And then last week, Seattle brought it down to earth a little bit with the expectations for Rodgers. At 41 years old, I didn't expect much upside from Aaron Rodgers. He'll have a couple pop games here and there, but this week in New England could be a grinded out type of game, and the ceiling to me just isn't that high. 18, Michael Penix Jr. of the Atlanta Falcons. So Michael Penix, week 1, he looked good. He could go out there and make plays, and they got great options in this offense. Obviously, Bijan out of the backfield, dual threat. Drake London, Darnell Mooney, Kyle Pitts is coming around a little bit in this offense as well. But the thing is, this week at Carolina, they could get off to an early lead like they did last week in Minnesota and just feed Bijan Robinson and Tyler Algier in the second half of the game. So like I said, Penix could go out there and have a big game, but this is a run-first type of team when you got a top-line running back like Bijan Robinson. His ceiling's low. 19, Matthew Stafford of the Los Angeles Rams. So far, he's off to a decent start as Matthew Stafford. And when you got stud receivers like Puka Nacua and Devontae Adams, everything's going to be easier, especially with these guys do yard after catch. But this week in a tough matchup at the Philadelphia Eagles, and his ceiling, even with those 2 great stud receivers, to me isn't that high, is Stafford. He's a back-end option, but a great option is a number 2 quarterback in Superflex 2 quarterback leagues. And the final quarterback I'm ranking this week's Bryce Young of the Carolina Panthers. Last week, I know it was a lot of garbage time for Bryce Young. And once again, this week versus the Falcons coming to town, I think we're going to see some more garbage time. He's got the impressive rookie receiver, Teddy McMillan, and now Hunter Renfrow has emerged in this offense as a target he can rely on a little bit. 2 touchdowns in last week's game, and even Jatavian Sanders is starting to come around a little bit. So if those guys could get going and you got a solid back and Chuba Hubbard out of the backfield, I think Bryce Young could work his way into being an okay fantasy option. But this week versus Atlanta, not the highest of ceilings, but I think he's going to have to throw a lot with some garbage time towards the end of the game. So that's a top 20 quarterbacks I'm ranking for week 3 of the fantasy football season.